heard about CVLC when I was doing volunteer pro bono work in Baltimore and looking for resources to use. Um, so I sort of heard about CVLC before I even got to Connecticut. And then with a new job opportunity, coincidentally, I had the opportunity to relocate to Connecticut. And so I was just like, oh, well, maybe I could potentially volunteer with this organization that I had heard about when I was looking for materials to help me with a different pro bono case. And so I reached out and came into the center and got to meet with, it was Margaret Middleton at the time, I believe. Met with her and learned more about the organization, and thought it would just be so wonderful to continue that volunteering with CVLC. First of all, my husband is a veteran. I don't have any military service, but the skills that I do have as an attorney, I feel it's a way for me to contribute to the effort that there were so many brave individuals who contributed by actual military service. So it just seems like a way that I can participate, and in a sense to sort of serve my country by serving those individuals. So that's what I would say was my primary motivation. The more that I've volunteered, the more I've learned about individuals who have served our country and then have experienced difficulties. And it's such a challenge for them in so many ways. I think the mission of the CVLC to help those individuals with whose situations and challenges might not be readily apparent. I think everybody can recognize that military veterans, have served our country and have unique challenges. But when you dig into it, really just how deep those challenges go, it's humbling. And I'm so grateful and proud that there are organizations out there that are dedicated to understanding those challenges and putting the resources to work for them. With the veteran that I just worked with, I think on the face, we can all agree, don't ask, don't tell was an unfair policy, sure. And his unique case, the more I dug into it, it occurred to me that for his particular situation at the time it occurred, if he were to have any witnesses to support him, they would be de facto subject to being kicked out of the military under don't ask, don't tell. And so for an individual an individual could not have properly defended themselves because others would risk the same severe consequence of separation from the military. And that wasn't something that had occurred to me when just sort of on the surface thinking about that policy, but really, just the weight of what individuals have gone through and experienced, it really landed on me in a different way when going through his case. And again, I'll defer to folks to make sure that, that's a detail he's comfortable to share. I guess as far as a common challenge, I think that what I would say there is that folks who have served their military, in my opinion, whether they have an honorable discharge or a dishonorable discharge, are rightfully very proud of the fact that they chose to serve the military. And so things could happen that take them on a different path. But I think everyone that I've worked with is proud of the fact that they made that decision. And looking, I think, for an evolution in the way that the military looks at those service members with a greater level of empathy for what they are experiencing during their service that may result in challenges and maybe, behaviors. I think the military has come a long way as far as how they look at alcoholism, how they look at drug issues. But it's come a long way, and those folks who were in before the evolution of how they looked at it, I guess to be frank, perhaps were done a disservice. I want to be clear, like this case was successful, but not without the CVLC, right? And I think that that should be an encouragement to attorneys who are thinking about where and how to volunteer pro bono, that this is an organization that is dedicated to making sure that volunteers develop the skills and the competencies to represent veterans very well and to the level that they deserve, even though it's a volunteer effort. So I increased my skills and my competencies working with the CVLC. So I learned from a legal framework, and I'm very grateful to have had that experience and be able to grow professionally. And then just, more of a reflection of what we've been talking about. I've learned a greater respect than even I had before of veterans. I have the perspective of my husband's service, my uncle's service, but the more you hear from service members, the more you learn and more deeply understand what they've been through and their proudest moments as well. Start the conversation, reach out, and get familiar with the resources that the CVLC has. The brief bank, for example, is amazing. The CVLC keeps these materials on hand that are, I wouldn't say a template because every situation is unique, but they are so well done and so carefully put together as resources that they're very helpful. Number two, I would speak very highly of the way that cases are presented to a volunteer. For example, the transfer memos that you put together very nicely lay out, a synopsis of the case. Certainly can't incorporate all of the facts. Point to, what facts may be helpful, what resources could be used to uncover more information, what a potential legal theory could be. So they, you point folks in a good direction very nicely. And then, the staff that you have to support folks, it's top notch, right? So some of the materials that you may need to put together a brief may be difficult to find, and your staff members are very aware of that and were so helpful and so responsive. So I would say this organization is set up to assist folks who do not have a background in this, but that are passionate to learn about, because you have materials in place and have individuals in place to discuss the cases together so that you can ensure competent and good representation for the veterans. It was interesting is Michael, the veteran whose case that we were successful with, we didn't meet face to face until he was signing or reading his brief, the final brief that we had put together. So we spent, I would say top of mind, I would have to double check, probably nearly a year communicating by phone before Zoom was a thing. And in a sense, I almost think it works well for veterans because, a lot of these clients have significant challenges with housing, with income, with work. And so it can be a burden for them to come meet you somewhere, just as much as it may be challenging for a volunteer who's got a day job to go make a trek, a long ways away. So it actually worked fairly nicely to do the interviews on the phone. The way Michael and I work together is I would print things for him, mail it to him with postage prepaid to send back to me, because some folks might have challenges with technology, with even having printers, right? So in a way, today's technology is set up to actually, I think, in a way, help more with some of the clients who are facing challenges. It's been the most meaningful part of my legal career to be able to help individuals who have done something that I have never done, and to serve their country, physically in the military is something I have never done. And it's an honor. Well, I hope folks maybe could take from it that as both a volunteer and a sponsor, that I I believe the money that is given to the CVLC is put to a very effective service, right? Um, because I've lived the experience of a volunteer and know what the staff is doing and how engaged the staff is at the CVLC and how great your resources are, that I think it's both money well spent and time well spent. Want to make sure that I make it clear how grateful I am to the folks that work at the CVLC. You know, I understand as the attorney working on his case that I'm getting a lot of shine and credit for it, and I certainly appreciate that. But I want to make sure that it's clear that, you know, the folks in your staff, and I won't mention folks by name because I'd be afraid to miss somebody, just how helpful folks were. And, you know, it was a group effort. And I hope it's clear because I think potential volunteers should know that there is a support framework in place. It's I think a tremendous undertaking to help a veteran, right? So it's a life-changing activity to engage in, and it's difficult, right? Like, these are not slam dunk cases. You will likely hear no more times than yes, and it can be very disappointing, and you may wonder if you provided, you know, that best level of service. But I think it's very important for me to express how impressed I am with the staff and just how helpful folks were, so that future volunteers can have that comfort level that, you know, you will be supported. It is a difficult endeavor and a difficult topic, but you have the framework in place to feel that you will be successful in providing competent and diligent representation.